And verse number 15, for this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears were dull of hearing, and their eyes have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with the ears, and should understand with the heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. Be careful what you choose not to listen to and listen to. Be careful to think for yourself. And also, he said, as I prepare to go into the message this morning, Christ said in Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19, familiar words, but slightly different than some of you know, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because it is he who hath anointed me to preach to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and the recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Y'all ready? It's about to be a truth train coming right through here.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be different because I didn't come this morning to get somebody out the grave that got up out of it 2,000 years ago.
Amen.
I came to get the people that claim to follow that person up out of their grave that we seem to be in. That teaching is no good if we don't get out of our own grave. Y'all ready for this? If you would, in the book of John, and I'm going to read a few passages. John, the chapter is 11, which is a familiar story. If you are willing and able, we ask that you stand for the reading. And I'm not going to read the whole chapter, just a few verses that we have chosen for our study on this morning. That will be John, the 11th chapter. I'm going to read verses 1 through 4, verses 34 through 39, and verses 43 through 44. All who have it, say amen. Now a certain man was sick, named Lazarus, of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sisters sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Verse 34. It says, and said, where have you or ye laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Verse 35, Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, behold, how he loved him. And some of them said, could not this man, which openeth the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Verse 39. Jesus said, take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he had been dead 4 days. 43 and 44. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin. Jesus said unto them, loose him and let him go.
All right, man.
You may be seated. Loose him, let him go. Truth crushed to the ground will rise again. Anytime truth and a lie are in the same room, the lie has to become uncomfortable and will be known. I heard a nice little story I'm going to share with you. I just heard it in a Bible class this morning. Some of y'all know it because you were here, and I'm going to share it with you. Sister shared it with us this morning. And I believe, if I can remember correctly, my sister, that there were two women. There were two women walking along, and I believe that there was a shower at play. They had come back, I believe, maybe from the beach or what have you, and there was a shower that they needed to take. And so the truth and the lie, some of y'all heard this, right? And removed their clothing. And the truth had to go in the place, and she took off her clothes and laid them up somewhere, and the lie did the same. And well, the lie got out of the shower first and put on truth clothes. But truth will not yield to a lie. So therefore, truth just decided she'd walk around naked. And when people saw her walking around like that, they were wondering, well, what's going on here? And people had to point out for the others that did not understand, well, that's just simply the naked truth. Because truth will never wear a lie, and truth will never be a lie. But when you bring both of them into the same arena, sometimes people get uncomfortable with the truth. It is Jack Nicholson in that famous line, and in that movie, A Few Good Men, he asked them, they wanted the truth, but he had to tell them, bro, y'all can't handle the truth. Well, the truth is something that I love. I claim that truth, it will be and is my own religion, because truth cannot be anything other than what it is. And I just believe if we would choose to make truth just that, what it is, then we would all be the better for it. However much it will hurt us, it will make us better. On this morning, it is not my duty, like I said before, to get somebody out of the grave that we talk about on every week, and we do that every week, and we will do it today. However, I want to talk to the people that claim to follow this individual that got out of the grave 2,000 years ago, because perhaps some of us are dead, and maybe we don't even know it. Going quickly now into the first verse, and I'm going to do the best that I can to be concise this morning and showing you the imagery that is here. If you didn't figure it out just yet, Lazarus is us. We need to look in the mirror at our condition. Amen. The first verse says, now a certain man was sick, named Lazarus. This was the man of Bethany and the sister of Martha. But this man, before he died, he had a condition. His condition we don't know of, but we know that he was simply sick. He was askeneo. He was weak. He was feeble. He was without strength. This means that he was unable to wield or show sway over others. He could not influence you one way or another for good or bad because he was dead. He could not encourage you to go to the left or the right because he was dead. He had no power, no influence. He didn't even have a presence because he was dead, or at this point, simply weak. If you can do this, if you can't wield influence, you might as well be dead. And I also want you to take note here, while this individual was sick, his name is Lazarus. The name means he whom God helps. Well, I got a question for us. Does God help you? It may seem that we can easily answer the question, but I'm curious as to how we carry ourselves if we truly believe that God can help us. with the many things that we fail to go about doing, the many accomplishments that we could have that we don't have, I'm asking this morning, are you an individual that God helps? Moving forward to verse number 4, we find that the sickness that this individual had caused him to die. When Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness was not unto death. And he's talking about, of course, final death. And then it goes on to say, for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified. It's not unto final death in this case, but some of us have taken on the attitude and the demeanor that nothing can be done because we are in fact separated from our Creator. Amen. It is a job of the enemy to kill hope in his opponent, because if I can kill your hope, you won't even try. We saw this in a real way when we talk about things of our nation, and we talk about the shock and awe campaign that took place some years ago. We completely overwhelmed the whole country to the point that the will was broken. They were to the point where they just simply surrendered. And today we see nothing short of the same thing in spiritual warfare. We are looking at ourselves in the mirror every day and wondering how we are going to overcome. How am I going to do this one more day? How am I going to just keep on keeping on? And the job of the enemy has become to simply break your individual will. And for that, if you feel that, you have become askeneo, or you have become sick. And it won't be long before you die. Amen. This is something you can't fight alone. See, this individual, when he is sick, he needs to depend on those who care for him. Amen. To nurse him back to health. All right. But what happens when even your caregivers are sick? All right. Our mothers sick. Fathers not only absent, but sick. Right. Spouses sick. Big brothers and big sisters sick. And you look around and you wonder, is there anybody to help you? And you lose hope because everybody around you is just sick. All right, feeble and hurt and without strength. You can't do this by yourself. In verse number 34, it goes on to tell us, and he said, where have you laid him? Something interesting I noted when I studied this is that when you're sick, it's very difficult to do for yourself. Depending on how sick you are, there are some embarrassing things that other people will have to do for you. In this case, he had gone on and died. He could not move. He could not choose his final resting place. He had no choice over even the shell or how the shell that he was would be decorated, since he had now left the body. Look at the text. In case you missed it, look at what it says in verse 34. He says, where have ye laid him? You don't even get to choose where you lay after you become sick and you die. In this case, other people will lay you where they want to lay you. So I came this morning to call your attention to something that you may not have even thought about. And maybe that's perhaps because we're clothed in a sort of death. We are unconscious as to our condition as the church and as people individually. And somebody has decided to lay us where they will. We live in neighborhoods because maybe it's not so much that we chose it, but somebody chose to lay you where you are. Right. Maybe the places that you shop and the things and the clothes that you buy is maybe because somebody else made the choice to lay you where you are. You didn't make that choice. You were simply, in real life, born into it. There was a choice already made. And when you dead, people will continue to make that choice. Have you ever seen a funeral or some services where the individual, perhaps they lived in one state, but they are from another? And the family will make the choice to have more than one service. That's because they are gone and the body is here, and the choice is made by the living, by the conscious, by those who are yet still alive. And I won't want you to be ignorant this morning, because we have to wake up and stop allowing other folk to lay us where they will. In verse number 35, everybody can quote that verse, right? We know the shortest verse in the Bible is that Jesus wept. One thing that I think can throw us off is that we immediately read where it says, the Jews said, behold how he loved him. And we forget what we read verses before, that Jesus did not believe that this sickness and this whole thing was a final death. But the Jews said, see how he loved him. And immediately we throw out the fact that later Jesus is going to declare that he is the resurrection. And we associate his weeping with the death. I think that's a misnomer. How could he, knowing who he is, and knowing that the sickness was not unto death, be crying about a man that is dead? But rather, the situation is a sad one. You see, when I look at us, when I look at the church, and when I look at my folk, I know what we can do, and I know where we can go, and I see the potential. So my crying is not simply the condition of death. My groaning and the pain that I have, it's not because you lie in that condition. But maybe it's because we look at each other without hope. We don't think we can do better. We don't think we can look better. We don't even think we can earn more, reach more, teach our children, teach ourselves, help ourselves, and come up from the grave that we're in. And this is where I believe Jesus' pain was. Because he knows who he is. He even knows what's about to happen. The sad part of the story is that nobody around really knows. The sad part, my folk, is that we don't know who we are. This is death in your own mind. It says they gave up. They gave up on their own. They thought this was it. In verse number 36, then said the Jews, behold how he loved him. And some of them said, could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should live? They immediately want to ridicule the solution to the problem. See, some of our problem is that the solution we don't want to deal with. Because it might involve doing some work on your own. It's very easy to pass blame for your condition. It's very easy to pass blame for yourself being sick. But it's an even harder thing to look at your condition and make a decision that I'm going to do something about it. See, this morning again, let me just repeat that. We do it every Sunday. We get him out the grave. But somebody has to come to us and get us up out the grave. Somebody has to tell us who we are and what we can do so that we can begin to do what it is that the Most High requires of us. Verse 39, Jesus said, take ye away the stone. This is where I want to be. Take ye away the stone. So Martha and his sister, watch this, y'all. She says, Lord, the problem with that is it ain't gonna smell good. Let me go off track for a minute. I got a few minutes. Y'all know that the Jews historically believed that the soul hung around for 3 days, and that if there was going to be a resurrection, it would happen within those 3 days. But in this case, it went a little further, to the fourth day. In other words, he ain't just dead, y'all. He dead. He dead to the point God done already said, nah, ain't coming back. It ain't gonna happen. So this was the significance of understanding that he was stink and that it had been past 4 days. And something lie in the way to that stone was there. And he's asking to take back or peel back the stone to deal with some of the problems that we are having in the church, in the home, in society, in America, in politics. I started at the church, but it goes into everything that we are in. You're going to have to peel back the stone. When you get ready to eat, some of us like onions, some of us don't. Make you cry. It may even stink. But if you want to eat, you're going to have to peel something back. You ain't got to get to the point where we will accept what's real and accept the smell in order to get to the root of our problem. See, all of our problems are not to be blamed on somebody else, but we do have to get to the point where we're moving our stones out of the way in order to reveal what really is the issue. But when you roll back the stone, you can no longer hide the problem because it's going to stay. When you get ready to deal with truth, it's going to tell you what's really the goings on. It ain't gonna feel good of the fact that we are around. Now I'm getting into society. I know some of y'all can't feel this. Y'all just wait. I'll be back to the church in a minute. But we gotta start killing each other, and that's a stinking thing in our community that we don't want to deal with. I understand what's going on with everybody else, but when are we going to love us so that we can stop killing us? That's a stinking thing we don't want to deal with. I know you ain't got no planes and no boats to go and buy that stuff. Well, why don't you stop selling it to your people? That's a stinking thing that we don't want to deal with. See, we got to pull up our own pants at some point. I know you don't like the young man coming at you because all he wants is a piece of you know what. Well, you got to change them clothes, sister. And I know, young man, that you want a real woman, but you got to stop acting like your money and your clout is what you need to get a real woman. That ain't what you need. Move the stone out the way. And we don't want to talk about it because that's the stuff that stink.
All right, now.
Don't feel good. But it's real, though. It's really real. And when you face the problem, it hurts.
Amen.
It's kind of like when you see a drunk and they say they ain't drunk. Huh? When you see the addict and they say they ain't got a problem. You ever watch Hoarders? And you walk in the door and you can clearly see something is psychologically messed up. But they don't see a problem. In all of our issues, they will not be fixed, neither in the church, neither at home, at school, or in the community until we admit we got a problem. In the church, we have a problem of downing each other and looking down the nose at the next person. Why is it that we are hating on brothers and sisters from one congregation to the next? I know we ain't got to agree about everything, but we should be helping each other uplift as a general rule. We got to move back the stone, peel it back. I'm going to ask you this question like one preacher say, does it stink yet? Because some of us ain't going to take a bath until we... Come on now. I have to show you that you stink. But we don't like to be told that we stink. We don't like the faces we see when somebody get a whiff of our mess. What you sniffing for? Well, you stink. What you mean? I'm not talking about a literal stink. Y'all smell good this morning. This morning. Y'all smell good this morning. But sometimes our attitudes stink. Sometimes how we greet one another stinks. And every now and then, sometimes how we give or contribute to something we ought to contribute to, we just stink. As far as our effort, it just simply stinks. stinks. So you can't hide the issue when it stinks. And everybody will smell your stuff. You and the people will know something smells dead up in here. Church, sometimes it has to stink before it can rise again. In verse number 43 of our text, the Bible says, "And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice." Now remember that what that name means. Lazarus. He cried with a loud voice, "He whom God helps." Does God help you?
Yes, yes.
He cried with a loud voice, "Northbound, come forward."
Yes.
See, he whom God helps, you have to look around and figure out who you are and who he's talking to. Aren't you a people who God helps? Look back through the years and figure this out. See, Big Mama and them had to have some hope
All right, man.
to get us even to this point that's dark. And I know it don't feel good, but if there was no hope then, we'd probably be in a worse condition now. And if the enemy is allowed to even kill your hope, you won't even try to save yourself. You don't realize who you are, because who you are is, watch this, you the truth, people. Because truth crushed to the earth always rises again. I don't care what you think about the tones of the message, just listen, because it's true. You can't take certain folk and put them in certain conditions and they not be destroyed. But we have seen throughout the years of world history that this or certain people can be butchered, tortured, lied to, and put down, yet and still rise again. You yourself were killed and imprisoned, whatever, for being able to read. But now we got the degrees. But I ask you, has it really started to stink yet?
All right.
What you gonna do about your current condition? Bring it to the church. Here we are in the church and we say we have this book. But are we dealing with truth from the book or just dealing with our personal preferences of what we like? We have turned church into entertainment rather than learning more about the Most High. We have turned church into a fashion show. I ain't come here today to impress you. I came here today because this is what I felt like wearing and I'm comfortable. I ain't sinning against nobody. Why would you do this thing? Because I'm trying to pull back the curtain. You need to take a look. And you need to understand that truth is what it is. And sometimes it stinks.
Amen.
But if you don't recognize there's a problem, you sure can't fix it.
Amen.
Verse 44, I'm almost done. Y'all all right? And he that was dead came forth. He spoke the word. He said, "He whom God helps." Come here, let me show you something. So he comes forth and watch this. He said he was bound. Even though he came forward, he still couldn't move. He was still limited. Somehow he got to the front of the grave. This is where I would normally get real theological and go into the grave. I ain't doing that. This is a different day. I got to get you mentally, spiritually out of this grave.
Amen.
So look at these clothes. He was bound hand and foot. Sometimes you can't move forward because you got a chain on you. Financial chains. Psychological chains. Your finances are chained, so you can't even move your hands to help us out of that situation because you bound hand and foot. So Jesus says, loose him and let him go. Before you can be loose, there was something on his face. It says his face was bound with a napkin. He was blinded. He could not see. Seeing also means understand. Everybody, somebody be showing you something and you say, oh, that means not that you physically saw it, it means you understand. When I read to you Luke chapter 4 and around verse number 18, what did Jesus say? Came to give sight to the blind. It's not talking about your physical sight, people. It's talking about you understanding. And understanding is something that we have lacked. Because to get understanding, it's got to stink. To get understanding, stones have to be rolled back. To get understanding, you got to face the truth of what something is, regardless of how much it hurts. And once you can face the understanding, you're no longer ignorant. See, we have a problem with the word ignorant because we think ignorant means stupid. No. Stupid is when you know the truth and you choose to ignore it and keep doing what you're doing. Ignorant is when you don't even know the truth.
All right.
Many of us have been ignorant. The problem is that when light is turned on, or when somebody comes to roll back the stone, peel it back, show you the truth of what's really going on, pull back the curtain and tell you to take a look, we don't want to look. We'd rather stay in our ignorance, because in ignorance we ain't have to worry about the smell.
All right.
But when you decide to take a look and you realize just how dirty, how stinking destitute the situation is, perhaps you make a decision that I got to get up from here. My brother got to get up from here. My sister has to get up from here. Our homes have to get up from here. Our businesses have to get up from here. And this country has to get up from where we are. But it ain't going to happen until somebody roll back the stone and we smell the foul stench of the stink that has been created.
All right.
Truth crushed to the ground will rise again. So these grave clothes, as I close, he says, loose him and let him go. Church, people, business, whatever you walk of life you in, you got to get out of these clothes that they put you in. I don't know who your they is, but whoever they are, don't be in the clothes that they put you in. Amen. See, at the beginning, I told you a story, thank you, Sister Dunlap, about truth. Truth could have put